first time I noticed something was wrong, it wasn't a noise or a shadow. It was the access log showing a door opening that I knew I hadn't touched. I worked the night shift at a storage facility off a service road outside a mid-sized city in the U.S. The kind of place wedged between a closed discount furniture store and a stretch of warehouses that went dark after 5. During the day we had people coming and going non-stop, moving vans, couples arguing over boxes, contractors loading tools. At night, it was mostly me, a humming soda machine, and the constant, low mechanical breath of the climate control system. The job was simple. Sit in the office, watch the camera feeds, do a walkthrough every hour, and make sure the gate worked. It paid a little extra because nobody wanted to be alone in a building full of sealed metal doors after midnight, but I liked it. The quiet was predictable. The air smelled faintly of cardboard and dust. The fluorescent lights in the hallway never stopped buzzing, like they were trapped on a single note. My supervisor, Marcus, had given me the standard warnings on my first night. Don't leave the office door unlocked. Don't go into a unit if you hear something. Call the police, not the hero in your head. Most of it felt like liability talk until he added, almost casually, "We've had people try to sleep here. They're wedged themselves behind stacks of boxes, quiet as mice." He said it like it was an annoying problem, not something that might be happening right behind a thin sheet of metal while you did paperwork. The facility had 2 long, climate-controlled buildings and 1 open-air row where the units faced the parking lot. My shift covered the indoor building's long corridors with identical doors, each painted a dull gray and numbered in black. A keypad controlled the main entry, and every keycode entry was logged. Every unit had a latch and an overlock. The cameras watched the hallways from above, their lenses like dark, unblinking pupils. That first week was uneventful. I learned the rhythms. A delivery truck passing on the highway around 12:40. The ice maker in the break room dumping cubes at 1:15. The motion sensors triggering the hallway lights in Building B even when nothing moved. I blamed that last one on the sensors. On the 8th night, the access log printed automatically at 2 a crisp little report slipped out of the printer beside my elbow. I glanced over it without thinking, expecting the usual entries. Front keypad, office door, maybe the after-hours entry from a tenant who worked nights. Instead, it listed a unit door event, B117, open time, 1:58 a.m. I stared at it long enough that my eyes started to feel dry. Unit door events weren't supposed to show up. Units weren't tied to the system. They were just metal doors with padlocks. The only things the system logged were the main entry, the office, and the interior building doors. I pulled the binder of procedures off the shelf and flipped through the laminated pages, as if the answer might be printed in bold. It wasn't. I searched through the software on the old desktop computer, clicking tabs until I found the device list. Most of the entries were exactly what I expected. Gate controller, office door, building A entry, building B entry. Then, near the bottom, was something I'd never noticed. Beta 117 latch sensor. I frowned at the screen. A latch sensor? I checked the notes column. The text was short and dated years back. Installed during insurance upgrade. Do not remove. Insurance upgrade. That made some sense. Maybe a handful of units had extra sensors for high-value tenants, like businesses that stored inventory. Still, it didn't explain why the latch sensor was logging an open event if the unit door was locked. I pulled up the camera feed for Building B. The hallway view was empty. The lights were on, too bright, making the floor shine like a strip of wet concrete. Every unit door sat closed and still. Beta 117 was halfway down the corridor, right in the middle of the frame. Its door looked exactly like the others. If something had happened, it was already over. I told myself it was a glitch, a sensor hiccup, the software mislabeling an entry. I printed a second copy of the log, filed it, and went back to watching the screens until my eyes started to blur. At 3 o'clock, I did my walkthrough. That was the only part of the shift I didn't like. The office felt safe in a dull, boring way, but the corridors swallowed sound. My shoes made small echoes that seemed to bounce behind me. I carried a flashlight even though the lights were on, mostly because it made me feel less ridiculous. Building A was fine. Nothing unusual. In Building B, the hallway smelled a little sharper than usual, like cold metal. I walked past unit numbers in order, letting my eyes skim the padlocks. Most were the same dull brass. Some had new, shiny disc locks. When I reached B117, I slowed down. The lock was there. A disc lock, silver, clean. The latch wasn't hanging loose. The door seams were tight, with no visible gap. I pressed my hand lightly against the metal, feeling its temperature through my palm. It was cool, normal. I shined my flashlight at the top corner where the door met the frame. There was a small black puck, maybe the sensor. I hadn't noticed it before. It looked like a cheap piece of plastic stuck on with adhesive. Nothing about the unit screamed open. I moved on, finishing the loop and returning to the office with that small, unpleasant feeling of having checked under a bed and found nothing, but still not feeling better. The next night, B117 logged another event. B117. Open time. 1:58 AM. The exact same time. That's when it stopped being a glitch in my mind and started becoming a pattern. I watched the camera feed at 1:55 with my hands resting on the desk. The hallway was empty. The lights were on. The door to B117 was closed. At 1:58, nothing happened on camera. No movement. No door shift. No shadow. But the log printed anyway. The printer made its little mechanical whine, and the paper slid out like a tongue. I didn't like how automatic it felt, like the building itself was keeping a schedule. I replayed the camera feed. I zoomed in digitally until the image pixelated and grainy. I watched the seam of the door, the lock, the concrete floor just beneath it. Nothing changed. I checked the device list again. Only B117 had a latch sensor. By T10, I convinced myself there was some innocent explanation. A loose sensor. Temperature changes. The vibration from trucks on the highway. Anything that didn't involve my imagination filling the corridor with breathing. At 2:30, the phone rang. The facility phone didn't ring much at night. It startled me so badly I fumbled the receiver. Storage facility, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was silence. Not the dead silence of a disconnected line, but the kind where you can tell someone is on the other end, holding their breath. Hello, I repeated. A soft sound came through like fabric brushing against the mouthpiece. Then, faintly, a series of beeps. Not random tones. Keypad beeps. My stomach tightened. The beeps were slow, deliberate. 4 of them. A pause. Then 2 more. Another pause. Then 1. Like someone entering a code. I stared at the office keypad on the wall, half expecting it to light up on its own. The beeps continued for a few seconds, then stopped. The line went quiet again. Marcus, I said, even though it made no sense. No answer. I hung up and immediately checked the main entry log. No code had been entered. The gate hadn't opened. The building doors were untouched. I checked the camera feeds outside. The parking lot was empty. The gate was closed. The red LED on the keypad glowed steadily. Bored. I sat back down, forcing myself to breathe normally, and told myself it had been a wrong number. Someone's pocket dialing, keys pressing against the phone. That explanation didn't fit neatly, but I tried to cram it into place anyway. At 3 o'clock, I didn't do the walkthrough. I told myself I'd do it at 3:30. At 3:30, I told myself it wasn't necessary. The cameras were clear. The logs were normal. The doors were locked. At 4:12, the hallway lights in Building B flickered. It wasn't dramatic, like in movies. Just a quick pulse, like someone blinked in a brightly lit room. The camera feed hiccuped for a fraction of a second, pixelated blocks, then normal again. When the image stabilized, the corridor was the same as always, except B117's door looked slightly different. Not open, not even ajar, but the lock, which usually hung straight down, now angled a little to the left, as if something had nudged it. I leaned forward until my face was inches from the monitor. My eyes traced the lock's outline. It might have been the camera angle, a trick of perspective. Still, I watched it. It didn't move again. At 5 a.m., my shift ended. I left the office quickly, locked the door behind me, and drove home while the sky slowly turned the color of wet paper. The whole time, I kept expecting to see headlights behind me, keeping the same distance no matter how I sped up or slowed down. The next day, I tried to bring it up casually to Marcus. "Hey," I said, leaning against the counter while he sorted mail. "Do you know anything about B117? Like, why it has a latch sensor?" Marcus didn't look up. "Insurance thing. Old tenant stored expensive electronics. Does it glitch sometimes? It keeps logging." He finally lifted his eyes, and the look he gave me wasn't annoyance. It was something closer to discomfort. "It logs open events?" he asked. "Yeah. Same time. 2 nights in a row." He stared at me for a moment, then glanced toward the hallway as if he expected to see someone listening. "Just don't mess with that unit," he said. "I'm not," I replied, too quickly. Marcus exhaled through his nose, like he'd made a decision. "We had a break-in attempt last year," he said. "Not successful, but someone was trying to get in without tripping the main logs. They were smart. They didn't hit the gate. They didn't use codes. They found ways." "What ways?" He shook his head. "If it logs open, call the police. Don't go down there." "Shouldn't we check it during the day?" I asked. "We did," he said. "Nothing in it. Tenant moved out. We thought about removing the sensor, but insurance wanted it there. So it's there." There was a pause. "Why is it empty?" I asked. Marcus' mouth tightened. "Because nobody wants it," he said. "Not after what happened." I waited for him to say more, but he turned back to the mail like the conversation was finished. That night, I came in early and tried to be rational. I made coffee. I reviewed the camera system. I set an alarm on my phone for 1:55 a.m., like I was preparing for a test. At 1:54, I switched the building B corridor camera to full screen and turned the volume up even though there was barely any audio from those feeds. The hallway sat silent and bright. At 1:57, I heard something through the camera mic, a faint scraping sound, like a shoe sole dragging lightly across concrete. The hallway on screen was empty. The scraping continued, slow and steady, moving closer to the camera's position. It sounded like someone walking carefully, deliberately, trying not to make noise and failing. My throat went dry. The sound stopped directly beneath the camera, as if whoever or whatever was there had stopped under the lens. On screen, there was nothing but a clean stretch of corridor. Then, at 1:58, the printer whined. B117. Open at the exact moment the log printed. The camera feed flickered again. A brief wash of digital static. Then, for less than a second, the hallway lights looked dimmer, as if a shadow had passed over them. Not a moving shape, not a figure. Just a change in brightness. And B117's lock shifted. Not a lot. Just enough that I could see it swing, like someone had touched it and let it go. It swung once, then settled. I sat frozen, my hand hovering over the mouse. My first instinct was to call Marcus. My second was to call the police. My third, some stupid, curious animal part of my brain, was to go look. I didn't. I picked up the phone and dialed the non-emergency line with fingers that felt too clumsy. I told them I worked at a storage facility, and there might be someone inside the building. I tried to keep my voice calm, but my words came out too fast. They said they'd send a unit. While I waited, I watched the hallway feed like it was a live animal I didn't want to blink at. Nothing moved. No shadows. No more scraping sounds. 10 minutes later, headlights swung into the parking lot. 2 officers came in through the main door after I buzzed them. They were polite in that tired, professional way, like they'd been called to plenty of places where nothing was wrong. I explained the log, the sound, the lock movement, I showed them the printed paper, the timestamp. One of them raised an eyebrow at latch sensor but said nothing. They did the walkthrough while I stayed in the office. I watched them on camera. Their flashlights bright white dots cutting through the steady fluorescent glare. They moved slowly, checking corners, looking at doors, glancing up at the cameras. When they reached B117, one officer tugged lightly on the lock. It didn't budge. He tested the latch. Solid. He shined his flashlight along the seams of the door. And then after a brief exchange with his partner he knocked. The sound was dull, hollow, a quick drum beat against metal. They waited. Nothing. He knocked again, louder. Still nothing. They moved on, finished the loop, and came back to the office. Everything's locked, the taller officer said. No sign of entry. No one inside. I nodded, trying to act relieved, even though the tightness in my chest didn't loosen. Could be a bad sensor, the other officer offered. Could be the lock shifting from vibration. Trucks, wind, whatever. Can you check the unit? I asked before I could stop myself. They exchanged a look. Do you have authorization to cut the lock? The taller one asked. No, I admitted. Then we can't force it without cause, he said. Not unless there's someone in danger or active break-in. But if you keep getting alerts, call again. And if you ever hear someone in there, don't go investigating. I promised I wouldn't. After they left, the facility felt worse than it had before, like the brief presence of other people had proven how empty it really was when they were gone. At 4 a.m., I checked the camera feed again. B2117's lock hung straight down, perfectly still, as if it had never moved. By morning, I'd half convinced myself I'd imagined the swing, that I'd wanted to see something because the log told me to expect it. I finished my shift, drove home, and tried to sleep. That afternoon, Marcus texted me. Police came. Everything okay? I replied yes. Then, after staring at the phone for a long time, I added, we should remove that sensor. He didn't answer. 2 nights later, I came in and found a handwritten sign taped to my office monitor. Do not acknowledge B117. The handwriting was Marcus sharp and slightly slanted, like he was always in a hurry. I stared at it until the letters started to look less like words and more like scratches. I didn't know what acknowledge meant in that context, and I didn't want to find out. I worked the rest of the night with my eyes refusing to linger on the building B feed. Like looking at it too long might count as acknowledgement. When 1:58 came, the printer stayed silent. No log, no flicker. For the first time in a week, nothing happened. I felt relief like a warm wave. Then, at 2:13 a.m., my phone vibrated in my pocket. A voicemail notification from the facility line. I hadn't called my own number. I hadn't even touched the office phone. With a slow, reluctant motion, I pulled the phone out and opened the voicemail. There was no voice on the recording, just the soft, close sound of breathing for several seconds, followed by a series of keypad beeps, slow, deliberate, almost careful. 4 beeps. Pause. 2 beeps. Pause. 1 beep. Exactly the same pattern as before. Then, very faintly, like it came from somewhere far away, inside a big empty room, I heard metal scrape against metal, one single drag that made my teeth ache. The recording ended. I sat there with my thumb hovering over the screen, feeling like if I moved too quickly, I might break something that was barely holding together. I checked the logs. No gate entry. No building door. No office door. Nothing. I didn't sleep after that shift. I called in sick the next night. Then I quit, giving Marcus some vague excuse about family and scheduling. He didn't argue. He didn't ask me to stay. He just nodded like he'd been waiting for it. A week later, curiosity got the better of me. I drove back in the middle of the day and parked across the street where the service road curved. From there, I could see the facility gate and the front sign with the faded logo. I watched people come and go. I watched the gate open and close. Nothing looked wrong. As I sat there, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail notification. Unknown number. I hadn't been to the facility in days. I hadn't given my number to anyone there except Marcus, and he never called, he always texted. I opened the voicemail. Silence. Then, right away, the keypad beeps. 4. Pause. 2. Pause. 1. This time, at the very end, there was something else so quiet I almost missed it. A small click, like a latch settling into place, and then the faint, distant sound of a printer whirring. I deleted the voicemail and sat very still in my car, watching the storage facility in broad daylight, like it might turn and look back at me. That night, at 1:58 a.m., I woke up without knowing why. My bedroom was dark and quiet. The air felt cold against my arms, from somewhere in the apartment far enough away that I couldn't tell exactly where. I heard a soft series of beeps, slow, deliberate, like someone entering a code.